Okay, we're going to start, well, yesterday we went over Washington's farewell address, the political parties, and it got started with John Adams. Today we're going to go into kind of the different issues that he had to deal with as president, and we're going to start off with the problems that we had with France. What do you need? So, Britain and France... Okay, so to start with, Britain and France, they're still going to war. Remember, who does? Someone have a pencil? There you go, perfect. Britain and France are still at war. We remain neutral because France helped us in our war. Britain's our best trading partner, but France is upset with us. So what have they started to do? If you take a look in the problems with France, you can find that. Taylor?
They began seizing U.S. ships.
They began seizing U.S. ships, and they did this because we were still trading with Britain, and they saw that as sort of us helping out Britain, and they didn't like that, so they were upset with us. They wanted to prevent us from being able to trade with Britain, so they started seizing our ships, and within a year, they, kind of looted and stole from over 300 of our ships. All right. Now, do you remember what political party John Adams belonged to? There's two choices. What political party did he belong to? Trent? Nope. Kaylin? He's a Federalist. And what did the Federalists want to do because the French were seizing our ships? What did the Federalists want to do? Sam?
Would we store a crown hoping that if they toss them?
No, that's not what the Federalists wanted. What did the Federalists want to do? Take a look in there and see what the Federalists wanted to do because they were seizing our ships. Caleb? They wanted to go to war. So some of the Federalists wanted to go to war. Now, John Adams wasn't the war-fighting type. Okay? So while his own political party wanted to go to war, what did he think would be a better option than going to war? Lucas?
Treaty.
Like kind of talking it out, treaty. So he thought if he went over there, worked it out, not him necessarily, but he sent people over and they could talk it out, it would be better. So he sent three guys over there, Charles Pinckney, which we've heard of him before, Elbridge Gerry, John Marshall. He sent them to Paris, and when they got there, they requested a meeting with the French Minister of Foreign Affairs, and they were just ignored for weeks. All right. Now, if you flip it over to 306, it talks about what happened when they finally were able to talk to somebody, and it wasn't the minister that they wanted. It was somebody. And what happened was what would become known as this XYZ affair. So I want you to read there on the top of 306 about this and be able to share with me what happened while these three guys were over in Paris trying to get the French, well, they wanted to talk to the French Minister of Foreign Affairs. So find out what happened, and then we'll come back. Write this question out and jot a few things down. So they head over, they're ignored right away, and eventually they're able to talk to three French agents, but they aren't necessarily, well, they aren't the people they want to talk to. So as they're talking to these three French agents, what happens? What goes on? Andrew?
They said that we agreed to loan France $10 million to pay the minister a bribe of $350,000 they would talk.
So basically these French agents asked for a bribe. They said if you give our country $10 million and pay the minister $250,000, we'll let you talk to him. All right, so France tried to bribe the United States, or the Americans that were there. And what, did they pay the bribe, or did they say forget it? Tristan? Yeah, they said forget it. They refused. And so they went home, put this on paperwork, and told the president what happened. Congress was unhappy about this, and Congress canceled any remaining treaties that were with France, and they said they allowed basically the U.S. ships to go ahead and seize French ships too. All right, so they said if French is going to seize our ships, we're going to seize theirs too. So they allowed them to seize the ships. And the reason it became known as the XYZ affair is because the three French men that they spoke to, they didn't refer to them by name, they referred to them as X, Y, and Z. So there was one guy who they referred to as X, one as Y, one as Z, became known as the XYZ affair. Okay? And so that basically France tried to bribe the Americans. We said no, canceled treaties, and so now we're attacking their vessels as well. Okay, so this was one issue, one pretty big issue that was going on with while John Adams was president. And this kind of stems into the next one because, you know, John Adams tried to do this, get this solved by talking. The Federalists are upset because they wanted to go to war, and the fact that they tried to bribe us makes them even more want to go to war. So they just start criticizing him in the newspaper. And the Democratic Republicans, they don't like him either because they're sympathetic with France, and they are happy, they don't want to seize their vessels, so they start putting things in the newspaper. And Adams is now putting blame on the Democratic Republicans because they're putting things in the newspaper about them. He's putting blame to the immigrants because a lot of immigrants were Democratic Republicans. So he passed a series of acts or laws that were titled the Alien and Sedition Acts. Okay? He was really upset that people were criticizing him in the newspaper, so he did this to silence the critics. And to silence the critics, this part had to do with the sedition parts of the acts. Okay? Now the alien part of the Alien and Sedition Acts, what group of people did that target? What group of people did that target? Ruby? Immigrants, because aliens are immigrants that are not yet citizens. And he knew that immigrants were mostly Democratic Republicans. All right. So he wanted to silence the critics, and he was targeting the immigrants who were not yet citizens. So part of the acts, one of them, what it did was it increased their waiting period to become a citizen from 5 years to 14 years, making it longer for them to not be able to vote, because they weren't citizens. So it increased the waiting time to becoming a citizen, and that targeted the aliens, the immigrants. Okay, that was one. It also gave the president the power to arrest any disloyal aliens, immigrants, and also kick them out of the country if they were being disloyal also. So these two right here, oops, I want my pen. That's not going to be the pen. See if it works now. Alright. So anyway, those two, if you want to put a little arrow, that those two targeted the aliens. Okay. And then the last one, outlawed sedition. And what is sedition? Someone tell me what sedition is. What is sedition? Courtney Grievel, what's sedition? Someone else might want to be looking too, just in case I call on you. What is sedition? Mason, what's sedition? Ruby?
Sedition is saying or writing anything false or harmful about the government, but I don't understand why they would pass that. They have the freedom of speech stuff inside the Constitution.
Good. Hold on. Okay, so saying false or writing harmful things about the government. The key word here is false and harmful. If you made up things about the government, that's how he thought he could get away with it. But, just like what you said, many people were quite upset about the fact that they thought he was going against their freedom of speech. People still did it, and they were charged and convicted and put in jail because of this. Thomas Jefferson and Madison tried to find, and remember Jefferson's the vice president, so they're trying to find many ways on how this violated people's rights, and they found a theory called states' rights, and that theory says that states have rights that the federal government cannot violate, which is that right there. Well, this doesn't last very long because in a couple of years, John Adams will no longer be president. Thomas Jefferson will, and he kind of just lets this expire and go to the wayside, and it's no longer a part of the government. All right, so nobody liked him for this either. So they were upset with him. He wasn't going to war. They're upset with him about these Alien and Sedition Acts. So much going on that people are not happy with him. And this next thing makes him even more unpopular. even though you would think it's a good thing. Peace with France on 307. People really wanted to go to war pretty bad with France. But John Adams wanted to do everything he could to avoid war, so he reopened talks with France and sent more people over to figure something out, and they finally agreed on a treaty. And what was the name of this treaty, Trent? Emma? The Convention of 1800. So this was a treaty that they agreed upon, and what did the Convention of 1800 say, Austin? What did this agreement say?
An agreement to stop all naval attacks.
Yep, this was an agreement that both sides would stop attacking each other's navy and ships in the sea and the vessels. All right, they signed it quickly. Adams' Convention of 1800 with France did not make the Federalists, his own political party, happy. They were unhappy, became an enemy some more, because they wanted to go to war. And he was very proud of what he just did because he saved the country from more bloodshed and from going to war. It makes sense. He was doing everything he could to avoid war, but the rest of the country wanted to go to war. All right? So he's an enemy among his opposition. He's an enemy among his own political party. He knows he is not going to get reelected. He barely won the first election, 68 to 71. He knows there's no way he will win. He's going to run again, but there's no way he's going to win. And we know he doesn't. And who becomes our third president, which will be next chapter? Caitlin? Yes. So we'll read more about him next. He gets a whole chapter. John Adams gets like half a section. Thomas Jefferson gets a whole chapter. So on this information from yesterday and today, we are going to take a quiz. It's a little more, I mean, it's still not very many questions on the quiz, but it's a lot tougher because there's a lot of stuff we covered here. So you're going to make sure you go over it. So there's a quiz tomorrow. Monday, we're having a test over all of Chapter 9. There'll be like 2 essay questions and then like maybe 10 short answers.
When do we turn in our journals?
You'll turn that in on Monday, too. Okay? So the rest of class, what I want you to do is